도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성,
포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Hundreds of online government public services, including postal and tax services, are facing massive disruption following a fire at South Korea's national data center. The government says it could take about 2 weeks to fully restore these services. Top diplomats from North Korea and China met in Beijing and agreed to deepen cooperation while vowing to stand against Washington. At least 2 people were killed and 8 were injured in a deadly shooting at a Mormon church in the U.S. state of Michigan. Authorities say a gunman opened fire inside a church during a Sunday service before police shot him. We begin this morning with a fire that broke out at the National Data Infrastructure Center on Friday evening, disrupting key online government services. The government is now working on relocating the damaged systems, but says it could take around 2 weeks to fully restore these services. Our Moon Ji-young starts us off.
Some key online government services are currently unavailable or facing massive delays following a fire at the National Information Resources Service in Daejeon on Friday. The fire started when a lithium-ion battery exploded in a server room in the building. The incident has caused a nationwide paralysis of 647 government administrative and civil services. Of these, 96 were severely damaged. As of midnight Monday, the government announced that it has restored 39 services, including mobile ID services, the healthcare big data system, and crucial post office financial services. The government said it is preparing to relocate these 96 damaged systems to the agency's branch in the southeastern city of Daegu, a process expected to take around 2 weeks. With the Chuseok holiday approaching, there is a high likelihood of delays at public institutions as administrative tasks are expected to surge. During an emergency meeting on Sunday, President Lee Jae-myung apologized for the inconveniences caused, citing the lack of an emergency system.
이번 화재 때문에 국민들께서 큰 불편과 불안을 겪고 있습니다. 국정의 최고 책임자로서 송구하다는 말씀을 먼저 드립니다. 당연히 비용을 들여서라도 대책을 세웠어야 되는데 이 예측 가능한 일이 실제로 벌어졌고 대비책은 없었다는 것입니다.
President Lee further emphasized the need for a thorough investigation, noting that a similar disruption occurred 2 years ago and criticizing the lack of a dual operating system. He called for around-the-clock efforts to swiftly restore key public systems and resume their operations to prevent further public inconvenience in daily life services. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in China, the country's Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with his North Korean counterpart Choi Son-hee in Beijing on Sunday, where the two pledged to deepen exchanges and cooperation while delivering a pointed message towards Washington. According to China's foreign ministry, Wang reaffirmed that strengthening ties with Pyongyang is a firm strategic policy of Beijing's. He also called for closer communication to promote peace and development in the region. In response, Choi said Pyongyang will work with Beijing to strengthen strategic communication, expand exchanges, and deepen cooperation. Wang also criticized power politics and bullying by the United States and praised North Korea's support for China's core interests and President Xi Jinping's global initiatives. A deadly attack at a Mormon church in Michigan has left at least 2 people dead along with the suspect. President Donald Trump condemned the shooting, calling it a targeted attack on Christians. Our Lee reports.
A deadly attack on a church in Michigan has left at least 2 people dead and several others wounded. Police say a 40-year-old man drove his pickup truck through the front doors of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township on Sunday, while hundreds of worshipers were gathered inside for services. After crashing into the building, the man opened fire on the congregation before allegedly setting the church ablaze. The suspect has been identified as a 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford.
That suspect is a 40-year-old male from the city of Burton, who we identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford. Currently where we're at, an update, I gave you 10 victims who were victims of gunshot. Since then, we have 2 victims who are now deceased. One additional one had died at a local hospital. And again, that suspect is deceased as well.
Following the attack, the suspect fled the church, chased by 2 police officers. The suspect was then fatally shot in an exchange of gunfire with the police. A motive has not yet been determined, and it is unclear whether he had any connection to the church. President Donald Trump, in a post on Truth Social, called the shooting a targeted attack on Christians. He said he had been briefed on the incident and urged an end to what he described as the epidemic of violence across the United States. The Michigan church attack comes on the heels of several high-profile shootings in the U.S. This includes a shooting in Minnesota where a gunman opened fire at a Catholic church during the first morning mass of the school year as children gathered. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now on the economic front, Seoul and Washington have been working to reach an agreement on tariffs, but the talks are deadlocked over key details of the $350 billion U.S. investment that Seoul pledged in July as part of a broader trade deal. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Kim Young-jin, professor at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So U.S. President Donald Trump recently said the $350 billion investment is an upfront payment and compared it to a deal made with Japan. And top officials here and analysts say it's impossible for Korea to pay this amount all at once in cash, as Trump suggests. So what would be the most effective way to resolve the situation?
Well, as you mentioned, the U.S. President Trump asked, Korean government to give $350 billion to the U.S. upfront and indirect total control of the fund. It sounds like absurd, right? If Korea does it as Mr. President asked, it will face a serious, hard currency problem, which is rightly expected by many experts. When it comes to the upfront investment and the control right of the fund, I don't think there would be a good solution for this issue because the interests of the 2 parties are totally different. However, there might be a solution if the U.S. moves different ways from the resolution with Japan. What I mean is that the issue will be resolved only when the U.S. government either allows the unlimited currency swap between Korean won and the U.S. dollar, or accept the Korean plan that consists of loan and loan guarantees with equity investment in the investment package. if Korean government decide to give subsidies to the damaged exporters by the Trump tariff rather than invest, $350 billion in the United States, for let's say, 10 years, there is nothing much the U.S. can do and to gain. In this case, they may want to increase the tariff more. However, the price increase in the exported goods will be transferred to the U.S. consumers, which most likely will not be accepted by the U.S. consumer.
Right, and the Trump administration is trying to impose more tariffs because starting October 1st, Trump also said the United States will put higher tariffs on imported drugs, trucks, and kitchen cabinets. How are these new tariffs expected to affect Korean businesses?
Well, the policy that imposes huge tariff on those items, will be good for manufacturers, but really bad for their consumers, right? And Korean companies won't be affected that much. That's my hunch. The key items Korean companies export to the U.S. include automobiles, semiconductors, steel, petrochemicals, lesser degree, food and cosmetics. The tariff will affect the companies in the UK and EU, including Sweden for furnitures, and Mexico and Canada for trucks. Even in the case of pharmaceuticals, the generic drugs will be exempted, and the companies which build or are going to build factories in the United States won't be affected. In sum, the additional tariff on the items won't affect the trade that much around the world and also in Korea.
I see. Speaking of automobiles, as you just mentioned, auto tariffs also remain a key issue. So Japanese and European cars face a 15% tariff in the United States, whereas Korean cars still face 25%. How should Seoul work on negotiations to minimize this impact on Korean car makers?
Well, so absolutely, that's really bad. While Japanese and European car makers, pay 15% tariff, but Korean car makers have to pay 25% of tariff. That's really bad, and a competitive advantage in terms of price-wise, Korean companies are in bad side. But it is not simply the issue of car makers who are tariff on cars. We need to look at it from a little bit larger perspective or view. The deal might be deeply related to the resolution of how the $350 billion investment would be managed and would be cleared. When the two allies, U.S. Korea, could reach an agreement with a reasonable plan for it, then subsequently the negotiations on the tariff on imported cars and the part from Korea will be finalized. So I think now at the moment we have to take a look and let's see what will be happening. Probably before the APEC meeting, we might have some solutions.
I see, but what's making it worse is that the Korean won hit its lowest level in 4 months against the U.S. dollar. Do you expect this trend to continue, and how might this affect trade negotiations in the future?
Well, the volatility will be kept, for a while, before the Korea and U.S., reach the agreement about the $350 billion, investment. So basically, at the moment, lots of experts and practitioners are concerned and worried about the request for the upfront of the President Trump. Basically, our foreign reserve, Korean foreign reserve is only like 410 billion US dollars. If out of $410 billion, if you just give $350 billion to the US, absolutely 100% will meet or will face the hard currency crisis again. So that absolutely worrisome condition. But so that the volatility in the foreign exchange market for Korean won and US dollars will be held for a while. But I think, it will be settled down before the APEC meetings.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Over the weekend, South Korea's Navy celebrated the 80th anniversary of its founding with a fleet review in waters off the coast of Busan. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung was there.
With the commander of the Navy's latest Aegis destroyer, the ROK's Jeongjo the Great, reporting the commencement of the Maritime Fleet Review to the defense minister, the Navy's fleet review began. Celebrating the 80th anniversary of the Navy's founding, this year's fleet review was the 6th in the Navy's history, with the first coming in 1945. I'm currently on the deck of the Navy's 4,900-ton amphibious landing ship Ilchubong, where defense officials, including the minister, are on board for the fleet review, showcasing the country's naval strength both at sea and in the air. Along with ROK's Ilchubong were 14,500-ton large transport ship Barado, which recently took part in the U.S. and Australia-led Talisman Sabre drills as a lead ship, and the landing ship Dojokbong, which had around 2,000 members of the public on board. A series of warships and aircraft, including the latest MH-60R maritime operation helicopters and the Aegis destroyers Haejong the Great, also featured, along with submarines. With the Navy showing off its capabilities, South Korea's defense chief underlined the importance of maritime security.
Maritime security is directly linked to the nation's survival. Since 99.7% of our country's trade is conducted by sea, maritime routes are essentially the lifeline of the nation.
The fleet review included an anti-submarine operation where P-8A maritime patrol aircraft, MH-60R and Lynx helicopters detected and tracked an enemy submarine before releasing a training torpedo. A demonstration of the Navy's firepower followed, involving both manned and unmanned assets responding to enemy vessels. People who got a chance to see the event enjoyed every minute of it.
Seeing the Navy's capabilities in person made me realize how strong our national defense is. I feel confident that we can trust and rely on our Navy to protect our country.
Showcasing its vision of becoming a leading maritime power, the ROK Navy was able to demonstrate its strength and get closer to the public. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Busan.
In other news, South Korea's southern city of Jeonju is hosting the first ever Dronesoccer World Cup. The event, which kicked off on Thursday, has drawn thousands of participants from more than 30 countries. Our culture correspondent Park Gon-woo covers some of the action taking place in the air.
After the referee blows the whistle, 5 players on each team start to fly for their fierce battle. Unlike regular soccer matches, it's not athletes running on grass. It's these spear-shaped flying machines buzzing through the air.
This drone soccer ball looks just like any other sports ball, but once you switch it on, it's now ready to take off and fly into the ring that's set way above the ground.
Controlled by each pilot, the drones each have their own roles. Those in attacking position aim to shoot, and those in defense block the rings. During the game, collisions are fierce with drones crashing to the ground. But just like human players shaking off an injury, they quickly rise again and rejoin the game. Matches that are tied even go to penalty shootouts, where one drone has just 5 seconds to score as many as it can, while another drone blocks the ring. These intense competitions took place at the world's first Dronesoccer World Cup in Jeonju over 4 days through the weekend. Around 1,600 participants from 33 countries across 6 continents took part.
Drone is getting so popular all over the world, and then I looked into the whole game. It's a new sport, and it's really innovation, and it's so exciting.
Korean techniques are the highest level of all the world, so we came here to learn about the how they play in teams, and also what material they use, because it's important how the drone is assembled.
As the birthplace of drone soccer, Korea has been dominating many of the matches, and some pilots share what's required to be a great player.
Piloting skills are the fundamentals, so I practice 4 to 5 hours a day. But as a team, communication is just as important, so we constantly shout instructions, who's attacking, who's defending during the game.
As the World Cup shows how far drone technologies has flown, drone soccer may be the next game to really soar as it takes flight from Korea to the world. 박건우, Arirang News, 전주.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Iran has strongly condemned the reimposition of United Nations sanctions over its nuclear program, calling them unlawful and saying they undermined diplomatic efforts. On Sunday, Iran's foreign ministry denounced the reinstatement of UN sanctions on Iran 10 years after they were lifted, labeling them unjustifiable, illegal, and a violation of international law. Iran claims the move is politically motivated and refuses to recognize the legitimacy of the snapback process. That process was initiated by the UK, France, and Germany, who cited lack of cooperation from Tehran. The snapback process automatically reimposes all UN sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program, including arms embargoes, halting uranium enrichment support, and asset freezes targeted at individuals and entities tied to Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Over in Europe, Denmark has imposed a week-long ban on civilian drone flights following fresh drone sightings at military bases over the weekend, just as Copenhagen prepares to host a high-level EU summit. The Danish government announced on Sunday that civilian drones will be banned nationwide from Monday to Friday during the week of the EU summit, citing security concerns after drones were observed over several military bases over the weekend and civilian airports last week. NATO also announced it would deploy an air defense frigate in the Baltic Sea in response to last week's drone incidents. The Danish Transportation Ministry stated that the temporary ban on all civilian drones flying in Danish airspace aims to remove the risk that enemy drones can be confused with legal drones. It warned that violations may result in fines or imprisonment for up to 2 years. Denmark will hold the rotating EU presidency, and the summit of leaders and officials is scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday. In India, at least 39 people, including children, were killed and dozens were injured on Saturday evening in a crowd crush at a political rally in Karur, Tamil Nadu state. The rally was hosted by actor-turned-politician Vijay as part of his 2026 state elections campaign. According to reports, more than double the 10,000 people permitted for the rally had gathered when the crowd surged forward suddenly during Vijay's address. Vijay expressed heartbreak over the tragedy, and the Tamil Nadu government announced compensation for the families of the deceased. Finally, American pop star Selena Gomez has married music producer Benny Blanco, confirming the union in a social media post. Blanco responded to her post, writing, "My wife in real life." The wedding ceremony, an intimate gathering of close friends and industry peers, was held outdoors in Santa Barbara, California. Celebrity guests in attendance included Taylor Swift, who reportedly gave a speech. Gomez wore a white halter dress with floral details, while Blanco donned a tuxedo and bow tie, both custom-made by Ralph Lauren. Gomez, 33, and Blanco, 37, met about a decade ago and got engaged at the end of last year.
As September draws to a close, it's a perfect day to feel the deepening of autumn. We had a cooler start than yesterday, and temperatures will rise throughout the day to around 25 degrees, so there is a gap in readings, but the air should feel very comfortable. Skies across the country will be partly cloudy today, with a chance of passing showers in some of the central east regions. And this afternoon, highs will be 1 to 5 degrees higher, topping out at 25 in Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, warmer over in Busan at 27 degrees. Rain is also in the forecast for the southern regions later this week as the holiday weekend begins. The rest of the country will stay mostly sunny, but be aware that the daily temperature gaps will remain wide. So do dress accordingly. You don't want to get sick before the long holiday.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Curious about Korea?
And especially K-food? How familiar are you with Korean food? The sea on 3 sides, a mountainous terrain, and 4 distinct seasons. Thanks to these conditions, Korean cuisine bursts with diverse and unique flavors.
Do you prefer sweet or spicy?
A meat lover or a seafood connoisseur?
Can't decide?
There's got to be something here that you like.
For Koreans, rice is foundational. It's a staple and the centerpiece to all meals in Korea. There's bibimbap, rice mixed with vegetables, gukbap, rice in hot soup, and kimbap is the demand around the world.
For me, it's noodles over rice. Korea has amazing noodle dishes. Chuy ramen and cold naengmyeon to blow away the heat. A meat lover here, pork, beef, chicken, I like them all. Did you know that bulgogi is listed in the English dictionary? There's also the famous chimek, chicken and beer, which is the best combo for a night out with friends.
Surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, Korea has a great selection of seafood, from raw fish to piping hot seafood soups. It's mouth-watering just talking about it. The 2 pillars of Korean condiments, gochujang and soy sauce.
Ooh, what do you prefer?
Gochujang. I like anything made with gochujang. In general, Koreans love spicy food.
I prefer the soy sauce base. There's something about the salty and sweet that hits the right spot. I think even those who are trying Korean food for the first time will really like it.
But that's not all.
We can't leave out the street food. If you're in Korea, it's a must-try. They are both treats for your eyes and mouth.
How about it? Mouth-watering, right?
Korean food, you've got to try it. Discover a whole new world of flavors.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, September 29th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Cheska.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday. Also Fabius with us.
Happy start of the week.
Yes. Start of the good week. So both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday, which means we're kicking off another work week, and tomorrow is Data Privacy Day, something that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. Every day we share bits of our personal information online, from shopping and social media to banking and streaming. But lately, data leaks have become a major concern here in Korea, raising questions about just how safe our information really is. So what steps can you take to protect your private data, Cheska?
I think that's a really great question, because I think every one of us, especially the millennials and Gen Z, are connected online, and every activity happens on the platforms. I mean, I really could do better, but I don't think I am the best at it. I try to change my passwords when the websites and the platforms tell me to. I do the two-way authentication, so I have my phone and my laptop. I also try to disable any recommendation on YouTube, because I feel like the algorithm is also one way that the data can be saved or tracked. So I'm doing my best, but I'm sure people who are watching it might think that's probably not enough.
There's always so much you can do, especially with passwords, which is why I always forget my passwords these days. I keep changing them.
Me too.
What about you, Fabio?
Well, it definitely gets very overwhelming. We're trying to protect our data, but at the same time, we need to allow platforms to use our data in order to use the services. It's very hard. I think I was also quite insecure about whether I should read the small letter in the agreement, like the privacy agreements or not. But at the same time, no one has the time for that. I didn't used to like this type of like facial recognitions logins or like automatic logins, but nowadays it's just like you don't really have another option. Everything is very fast paced, right? And at the same time, I just feel like my phone is listening all the time. Even if I don't search for something, just by thinking about it or talking about it out loud, sometimes they do recommend me things that are related to what I'm talking about. So these days I'm trying to like speak into the phone like free plane tickets to Spain, or
you
like
can't beat the system, might as well take advantage of it.
Exactly,
recommendation.
So while there are steps we can take to protect our personal information, it often doesn't feel like enough. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
In an era where almost everything is done online, keeping our personal information private has become more challenging than ever. Days like Data Privacy Day aim to raise awareness about these risks and remind us of the importance of protecting our data. Today on News Generation, we're taking a closer look at the growing problem of personal data leaks here in Korea, exploring similar issues happening overseas and sharing practical tips for what each of us can do to keep our private information safe.
As we just saw in the video, personal data leaks have become a very serious issue these days. From hacking incidents to large-scale breaches at major companies, it often feels like our private information is constantly under threat. And here in Korea, we've seen some high-profile cases just the past few months. So, Cheska, could you walk us through some of the most recent major data leaks and what happened in those cases?
Yes, absolutely. So back in April, a massive data breach happened to SK, Korea's largest telecom companies. And since then, a sequence of other large-scale hacking incidents took place, quite unfortunately, including KT, major financial firms, and most recently, gov't. Now, since they are some of the largest corporations here in South Korea, millions of customers' personal data have been leaked. However, critics do say that corporate accountability still remains minimal to none. And to make matters worse, some companies are actually accused of preventing customers from actually cancelling the services, which kind of sparked even more public outrage and disappointment, because when you do have your personal data breached, there isn't really much steps that you could take. However, the companies don't seem to be taking a lot of actions or accountability in that area.
And that's really kind of the core issue. It's not just a single company. These leaks are happening across the entire industry, which makes it hard for anyone to feel truly safe. So I can only imagine how stressful it must have been, especially when there doesn't seem to be like a reliable alternative. So Fabio, did you happen to be affected by any of these recent data leaks?
Well, yes, I was. And I was also part of one of those companies that had one of the biggest data breaches. However, I didn't find out until a friend told me. I guess as a foreigner, it's also even more overwhelming because even if you understand the Korean language, you don't really have access to, reading all of those text messages. And it gets a little bit hard to learn about all of the regulations and benefits that you can get in this type of situations. And at the same time, it's quite difficult to navigate the situation because we cannot really do anything about that leaked data. We cannot recover it or try to stop them from using it. And so because of that, I feel like a lot of people are feeling that type of, that those companies are being incompetent a little bit in that aspect. And we're also kind of dependent on those services. We cannot stop using messaging apps or delivery apps just to protect our data because that is going to be a big inconvenience for our daily life.
I can't imagine how rough it must have been for you because even for locals, it's so hard to understand what's going on because there's so many different, like you said with the apps, there's so many different parts to it and so it's so hard to navigate it as well.
Well, honestly, I don't really know how to feel about it because at the same time, the effect is not immediate. You're not seeing a negative resolution out of the box. It's just you have to really wait for it and see if it's dangerous in the end or not. And because of that, I feel like a lot of people just are not that sensitive about the issue because you don't really see how it unfolds.
Right. So, and that you really highlighted the scale of the problem. So when even switching providers doesn't feel safe, it just shows how vulnerable our personal data can really be. So it must be really stressful knowing that there wasn't a complete secure option. But from what I understand, these kinds of data breaches aren't just happening in Korea, right, Cheska?
Quite unfortunately so, because more recently, account information from major internet platforms and OTT services, including Google, Netflix, and Facebook, which are very big corporations, has also been exposed. Now, according to the cyber specialist outlet Cyber News, a staggering 16 billion login credentials were exposed, and that's roughly twice the population of the entire world, which is truly shocking. And it kind of goes with what Fabio was saying. 16 billion is not only a large number, but you don't really see the consequence of what is happening with these data being breached or exposed. So I think that is something that is actually quite more scary than the actual number. What is happening with these 16 billion logins?
Right, and I mean, that is an enormous number, 16 billion login credentials exposed. And to put that into perspective, it's basically it's more than twice the world's population. So it really shows that no one is completely safe online, not even users of major platforms like Google, Netflix, or Facebook. But this makes me wonder, so are similar data leaks also happening in emerging markets, Fabio?
Well, yes, and according to a research contribution from the World Bank, a lot of developing countries are facing currently the challenge of becoming dependent on this online systems, but also trying to keep up with the digitalization of these developed countries. So because of that, they are also targeted to the same problems. You know, the cyber attacks come from the same place, and because of that, the cyber attacks are more sophisticated than their resources, which becomes a very, very big problem, especially when it comes to financial costs. So I do think that a lot of the victims usually tend to be from developed countries. However, developing countries also face a lot of issues in macroeconomic levels. And so because of that, a lot of research should also be devoted into those countries, because right now, currently, 90% of that research is only based on the U.S. Yes, because most of the companies are actually being managed in that country. So it makes a little bit of sense. But at the same time, we need to care about those developing countries, because if they don't keep the pace while avoiding the same problems, then it's going to be harder for them to keep up with the other countries.
So I think there's a tendency to talk about certain countries, but really it's like you said, it's like a far-reaching topic that affects pretty much the whole world. So to get a closer look at how data leaks are affecting people around the world, we'll be speaking with a young person from the UK who will share her perspective on privacy issues and recent data breaches in her country. That conversation is coming up right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined today by Katie, a Gen Z from Britain. Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi.
Hi. So what kinds of personal data leaks or privacy issues have happened in the UK?
So there's been several over the past few years. For example, in around 2019, there was a supermarket bank, and essentially there was a huge data leak that resulted in more than £2 million being taken from this bank, which meant about 20,000 people actually had suffered financial loss from this. So that was one of the really, really huge ones. But there's such a variety of these crimes that end up happening. Even the Church of England had a data leak where they had a group for survivors of abuse, and there was an email that got sent out that had a list of all of their names. So they really trusted in this place to keep their data safe. It was a place that they could like rely on, and it felt like, yeah, people really lost their trust in that, and it was really unfortunate. There's just been so many different cases from so many different institutions.
Wow, I mean, I think the best thing is for these things to not happen, but the next best step we can take is to regulate it. How are these issues being regulated in the UK? And do companies are actually held accountable for what's happening there?
So they are held accountable. We have a few different authorities that kind of monitor those. So we have the ICO, which is there to make sure that companies are actually being held accountable. So the companies should report these data breaches to the ICO within 72 hours. The ICO can then issue fines to them if they're not doing this. We also have the FCA, so if any financial institute has been a part of a data leak, then the FCA would be there to hold them accountable. The problem is if the companies are actually reporting these things. So with the supermarket bank, the bank itself was not actually holding itself accountable and didn't even put out an apology until this company had basically fined them millions of pounds. And then I don't know what compensation came from that, but eventually customers were paid back. But I think that, yeah, we do have those authorities, but whether these companies are actually putting themselves forward to admit what they've done, then we wouldn't be sure.
That is terrible. How aware and concerned are young people in the UK about this type of protection for personal information?
I think that naturally people are just trusting of these things, I guess, especially with people my age or younger. We've grown up with technology and we have this maybe blind trust in it. Maybe we're a bit too trusting that our data is safe. I mean, I know for myself with passwords, I trust my phone to save all of my passwords when they do a randomly generated one. I don't know if that's safe or not, but it's just the way that I've known how to do it. So I think that a lot of people just don't want to live in fear of these things happening, and we put a lot of trust in companies and organisations to protect our data. But I do think that we should probably be a lot more aware that these things can happen and be a lot safer. I think that so many people put a lot of information out on the internet that's very easily accessible to these people. So yeah, I think to an extent we're very, very trusting and we think that it's going to be safe, but people do need to be made a lot more aware.
I think everything you said was very relatable today.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your insight with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we just heard from a young person from the UK who told us about her experiences and concerns with data leaks in her country. So it's clear that personal information is at risk worldwide, not just in Korea, and the young people in particular are very aware of the dangers and how to protect themselves. But this makes me wonder who tends to be the most worried when it comes to personal data breaches. Are certain age groups or types of users more cautious or effective than others, Jessica?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So let's take a look at the screen to actually compare the numbers. Now, according to a recent survey, millennials actually expressed a higher level of concern over personal data leaks with 61%. But for the same question, still more than half of Gen Z respondents also shared very similar concerns, stating they did not feel safe about the data leak and personal information. Now, the survey question also included whether people felt safe about cyber crimes and other matters that were happening as well. Now, in response to the latest wave of data breaches, civic groups are calling for stronger security oversight, increases in heavy penalty standards, and the introduction of punitive damages as well as class action lawsuits. But as we have heard from Katie, our interviewee, I think a lot of things do need to take place, but also the accountability that is taken by the companies, I think, is a different question. Because I think it has to be parallel, right?
Yes.
We can also take these class action lawsuits and do our own ways of trying to resolve the problem, but if the companies are not being held accountable, or if there aren't regulations being set in place, then this is an off balance. Yeah.
Right. Collective action is really the point here. So interesting. So it's really with millennials, back to talk about your CGs, like millennials who are most worried with Gen Z is not far behind, which is relatable because we're all in that category as well. So it makes sense that younger generations are much more aware of the risks to their personal data because we all grew up online. So do you think people are becoming more desensitized to data breaches because they happen so often?
I think because we rely so much on that data, as Katie mentioned, we are just blindly trusting the services because we don't really have any other option. There's just so many diversity of platforms that take our data, and at the same time, these cases of data breaches are becoming more and more frequent. So people are feeling, you know, like they cannot really do anything about it. And at the same time, we have talked about the results not being direct and tangible. And because of that, it's kind of hard to measure or calculate how, you know, dangerous the situation is actually going to be. And because of that, a lot of young people, they just, you know, give up. They are just like, well, this is my data. I know that it's kind of dangerous. Just let it outside. And they want to take measures, but they don't really know how to act because at the end of the day, the responsibility is just lies in the company.
Right.
I think that's why it kind of goes back to what you were saying, how collective action is so important. Because as individuals, sometimes you feel really helpless at what's going on as well.
Exactly. And we have talked about more than 16 billion account information being leaked. I feel like at the same time, a lot of people feel like we are all on the same page at this point. So why would it be me? Since we are not seeing the results, we hear a lot about the cases, but not the results. A lot of people are wondering, are the threats actually real?
Real, exactly. Like we don't know the magnitude of the damage quite yet because it's not apparent. So I think we kind of, it's not that we're desensitized, it's more of, well, what can we do when the danger isn't imminent?
Yes.
Maybe take a step back and see what's happening. Yeah.
Right.
So it feels invisible, but also lingering at the same time. It always remains there. So a lot of people are worried about it, but they just don't think about it throughout their day because you don't see how it really plays out in the end.
Right. So everything we said pretty much highlights that while individuals need to stay vigilant, companies and regulators also have a major role in preventing repeated breaches. So, Jessica, what measures is Korea taking at the national level to tackle these issues?
Yeah, I definitely think the country can definitely do more. But in South Korea, experts are pointing out that the urgent need for nationwide review of information protection system and the establishment of stronger security frameworks. While there are monetary fines and penalties, critics do argue that these penalties are far too minimal and weak for issues as serious as personal data leak. And even the president has actually weighed in, emphasizing that stronger measures must be enforced to address this issue. And one thing that I would like to add is because there's so much technological development that is happening so fast, the legal structure is always heavier when it comes to instituting new rules. So I think the weight is sort of different. So I do hope that we do have a faster establishment of legal structure structure that can protect upcoming data leaks or personal breaches before something even more disastrous happens.
I think it's a good sign that, like you said, the president has also called for stronger measures, which shows how seriously this is being taken as it should be. And so this also makes me curious how other countries handle such breaches. Do they impose stricter penalties? So Fabio, can you give us an example of how other countries, like those in the EU, enforce data protection laws and penalize companies?
Well, in theory, everything is pretty good in the EU because there is a whole regulation about this type of data leakages. But at the same time, I'm not really sure how it plays out. But let me break it down for you. So the European Commission actually has a set of rules for these businesses and corporations for the data usage. So customers are actually allowed to demand those companies to delete their own personal data under most circumstances. And at the same time, if they feel like their own data has been misused, they can sue and also demand some type of economic compensation. Even if that type of loss is not only economical, if it's only intellectual or if it affects the integrity of that person, they also have the right. And at the same time, if this compensation is not provided or if the companies do not want to abide by the rules, the fine could be from up to 20 million euros, which is a very high, is a very high number, or 4% of the business's total annual international turnover. So we can see that regulations and also this type of, well, I guess, limits for these companies are quite useful in the sense that now companies are a little bit afraid of that. And I do think that over the years, the cases in terms of cybersecurity are becoming a little bit more vocal, especially since after COVID-19, everything became a little bit more digital, right? But at the same time, I do believe that cybersecurity is improving and improving as time goes by, but also cyber attacks. Plus, I also heard from some articles and news reports that some countries actually now make companies state that out loud in case they have a data leakage, which was not the case some years ago. So that might also be the reason why these days we are hearing a little bit more about these cases.
All right, I see. So just looking at how seriously EU takes data protection with imposing fines that can reach millions or even a percentage of a company's annual revenue, it's clear that even the biggest companies aren't immune if they fail to safeguard personal information. So given all these risks, it's important to think about what we can do on an individual level as well. So to wrap up our discussion today, what steps can people take to protect their own personal data, Cheska?
I mean, like I stated before, I definitely think I can do more. And it is quite difficult in this time of age where we're all connected in one way or another on certain platforms or doing certain activities online. But one way is definitely change our passwords. I am guilty of it too, but updating my password and information when needed. And also enabling two-factor authentication, 2FA. And also, I think one important thing is do not click on suspicious mails or contents that you do not know the source of. And even if it's coming from, let's say, financial institution, you can always check by calling them or calling their customer services to see if the content really was from that government organization. So doing these multiple check, I think, is something that we can do for now, and hopefully the policies and regulations will catch up to produce another boundary of protection.
What about you, Fabio?
Well, I definitely agree with that. I think at the same time, when you get something suspicious or if you're not sure if it's going to be malicious or not, you do have to think about the situation and take it one step at a time. So that means if you see some kind of problem happening and you've been alarmed about it, make sure to take your time to recheck. If you get that suspicious email, just make sure you contact the institution first to make sure that it's an actual problem. Same goes with personal issues. So we know that a lot of scamming takes place in situations where they make use of our personal information to get something out of us. So at the same time, even though, especially for younger generations, it's very common for us to express who we are and what we like out in the internet, we still have to be a little bit careful about our personal information. So obviously, passwords and things of the sort are also important, but things related to our personal life can also be detrimental to how people use that information. And so because of that, even if we create content on social media or even if we communicate with friends, we need to be aware that that is going to stay there in that kind of social platform. And even if you delete the content, it's very probable that people are going to be able to access that data. So at the same time, be very careful and very clean and transparent about the way you use social media, because right now social media is pretty much the Bible of younger people. We use it all the time to communicate and express our feelings, but at the same time, it is also a public mirror so that everyone can see what we do and what we like.
Is there part of your life that you tend to like not put online just in case of like privacy concerns?
Yes, especially things related to my family life or things that are very personal or even issues that some people go through. So things like mental health problems or difficult situations that you are dealing with, especially economic situations, I feel like it's better to just leave that for yourself and not really show that to the world, because otherwise you never know who's listening. And because of that, make sure that your message that goes out online is going to be some type of message that doesn't come back to you in a negative way.
Right, I think these are all good points as well. So data privacy really affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. Protecting our personal information is crucial because once it's exposed, it can lead to identity theft, financial loss, even misuse of your personal history. So from major corporate breaches to the everyday choices we make online, keeping our data safe is both a personal responsibility and a societal challenge. And staying informed, taking practical precautions, and demanding strong protections from companies and regulators are all part of safeguarding our information. Remember, your data is valuable and protecting it really matters. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. So big thanks to Cheska.
Pleasure's always mine, thank you.
And Fabio.
Well, tough topic, but very fun to be here.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.
That all the meals here serve as a foundation of its practices.